The best of both worlds. The fastest reflexes modern technology has to offer, onboard computer-assisted memory, and a lifetime of on-the-street law enforcement programming. It is my great pleasure to present to you RoboCop.
Hey guys, I'm Kevin.
I'm Jake.
And this is Movie Matters. Today we're talking about the 1987 film RoboCop. I love this movie. I've seen it a whole bunch of times. I watched it as a kid. I love this movie so much. I like anything Paul Verhoeven does. He's the director, and this movie just still is relevant to this day. It's so great. What do you think, Jake?
Yes, I saw this maybe in like late middle school or early high school. Never watched it again because I actually didn't care for it all that much.
No way.
Yeah, I can't remember why. And like, to be honest, I probably watched it on like AMC or something, so like I didn't get a lot of the real
brutal
movie
violence.
Yeah, so yeah, watching it the other day, yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. We'll get into everything, but like the world building in this is like unbelievably well done, and just the themes of the movie, like you said, are still extremely relevant. So yeah, let's just dive into it because
Yeah. So we're in August now, which is crazy. The year's going by quick. The summer's going by quick. We're doing all kind of summer fun, popcorn, blockbuster type movies, and this is a good movie to start off with. It was a hit, but it wasn't a humongous box office hit. It was made for $13 million, which is really not a lot of money. It went over a budget a whole bunch of times and had a lot of studio interference and had to be cut down, and it was like going to be rated NC-17 with the amount of gore and blood and guts in this movie, and they had to tone it down. And I mean, it's also made a ton of money on like VHS and laser disc rentals. Like it's made a good amount of money, and I think this is a fun summer movie. It came out July 17th in 1987, so pretty relevant to us being in the summer. It's just it's a fun movie. Again, I've seen it a whole bunch of times. Last time I watched it back in like April last year because I bought the 4K Steelbook edition, and just like it looks awesome and I like sounds awesome. Did you watch this in 4K or did you watch it on HBO? Because I know it's on Max.
I streamed it, but I mean, it looked great.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of behind the scenes to this movie. There's also a documentary on Netflix. There's like a series called The Movies That Made Us, and it's a whole bunch of behind the scenes on how movies were made, like all the classic movies, like Jurassic Park's on there, Aliens, I think Forrest Gump is on there, and RoboCop is on there. So I've seen that documentary. It's pretty good. It's a quick 50-minute watch. I just had it on like a little bit before jumping onto this to do this, and I watched a little bit of it last night, and it's, looking at the IMDb trivia, there's a lot of the same stuff in that documentary. So I'd say that's worth a watch if you haven't seen that, Jake. And for our viewers and listeners, it's definitely worth a watch. Yeah, I mean, this movie took a lot to get made. The screenplay was offered to every single studio out there, and everyone pretty much rejected it. And it was offered to pretty much every director out there. I mean, David Cronenberg was offered it, who we've, done his movie The Fly, and then Paul Verhoeven got a hold of it, and he was a Dutch actor and made Flesh and Blood before this, and that movie made no money at the box office and wasn't very good. I've actually never seen it, but that's what I've heard. But apparently when he got the screenplay, he was like, "Oh, this is a piece of shit," and threw it away. And his wife found it and was like, "Okay, you got to take a second look at this. Like, this is awesome." And there's a whole allegory to like corruption and American greed, and I don't know. It's just interesting having a Dutch director do American cinema. Like, we talked about this in our Paris, Texas review of how like a foreign director really just like having that outside perspective on America does a really good job of, fine tuning and like capitalizing on capitalism and, all the kinds of crazy themes that make America America.
Yeah. And like, there's almost something, like, I don't know if it's because, of like the foreign influence, but this movie's really accessible and like, really interpretable in like either the really highbrow or like really lowbrow kind of spectrum. Like you can just watch this as like a kick-ass like shoot 'em up kind of movie and like have a great time. But then there's like all this highbrow commentary, like you said, about like corruption and like corporate greed and commentary on the military industrial complex and like all this stuff that like, if you're like, it's totally fine to watch this and just watch people get blown away, but like there's a lot of thematic content in this movie that's like really surprising and delivered in a way that's like, if you're watching it for that, is like super engaging, and if you're not watching it for that, is like easily brushable, like to the side. It's done really well and really balanced well in that regard.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I first watched this, like I said, I was a young kid. I mean, I was probably like 10 or 12 years old, maybe at most. And like I watched all three of them. There's three RoboCops. I mean, there's a new one that came out in 2014, which I have not seen. Have you seen the sequels? I doubt you have if you just watched this again. Okay. The sequels are okay. They're very forgettable. I mean, I like bought the trilogy on like DVD back in the day and watched all of them. And I liked them, but like seeing this as a kid, I just definitely didn't pick up on all the symbolism and allegories and all that. Obviously, I just was like, oh, robot killing people, cool. All this blood squibs shooting out of people, cool. And then like rewatching it, like I said, I did last year. It's like I picked up on all that stuff because I hadn't seen it in a long time. And then rewatching it again, even more, it's like you pick up on all these things, and it's a movie that keeps on giving.
Yeah,
it's a good one. And like even like the whole like, it being set in Detroit and it being the, at the time the automobile capital of the world, and like, him being like an automobile. If you think about it, like his metal suit is automobile like and like futuristic like, and they even apparently like the cinematographer lit him like how they would a car because of the reflections on him, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and the armor's like really sleek and like sculpted. It's like if you look at him like in the robot suit, like it's not a very practical suit in a lot of ways, but like it looks awesome.
So awesome.
Like, yeah, it's like it's clear that that's what they were going for. They weren't going for any kind of like functional, kind of stuff. Like they were trying to make it look as cool as possible, and they definitely did a good job.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of background on the suit too. So first they hired special effects designer Chris Wallace or Wayless. I think they said his name was Wayless. And I know I pronounced it probably wrong in our Fly video and our other videos because he did the effects for the Fly. And he was the first one to kind of get his, sink his teeth into the suit. And Edward Neumeier, he was like, nah, it looked like someone threw up on a wetsuit. It was like bad. So then the studio cut him and gave Rob Bottin a try, and he's the guy who did all the special effects for The Thing, which
Oh,
The
okay.
Thing is obviously awesome. I can't wait to talk about that. Hopefully we'll do that I think we're going to do John Carpenter for all of October, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that.
So yeah,
right?
we're doing
Yeah.
it in October.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm stoked to do The Thing because that's one of my all-time
Yeah.
favorite movies. But yeah, they Rob Bottin and Paul Verhoeven clashed. Paul Verhoeven was like really just like very particular and very kind of difficult to work with on this movie, unless you like got along with him, but or like did it his way. But they clashed a lot, and what they argued most about is when Murphy takes his helmet off, Bottin wanted the scene to be filmed in like a dark area, so it would, the effects would look cool, but it wouldn't be like so in your face where it's like, oh, you could tell that's fake. Versus Paul Verhoeven was like, no, it's got to be in bright light. Like don't worry, like I'll have my cinematographer light this perfectly and it'll look awesome. And they clashed so hard on this that they basically like refused to talk to each other the remainder of the production, which is crazy. And like Bottin vowed to never work with Verhoeven again. And then they saw the final product of the movie, and they both were like, okay, that was fucking sick. And they went and worked on Total Recall together,
Oh,
which Total
nice.
Recall is awesome.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that scene in particular is super cool. And
Where he does the drill and takes his helmet off, you're saying?
yeah, and
Yeah.
keeping the helmet off for like the entire remainder of the movie is pretty cool.
Oh,
Kind
yeah,
of
it looks
that, like-
so cool.
Yeah, and like it's that makeup effect is built so well that like it's like you can tell that there's this thing like strapped to his head, but like it's done in like such a believable looking way. It's so cool. It's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the effects in the movie are awesome. Even the stop motion with Ed 209, the like security droid that Dick Jones is like, I want this. And then obviously you've got the corporate greed of Bob Morton's character being like, no, fuck you. I'm going to take advantage of this and give you RoboCop.
Take advantage of a robot killing a guy on accident.
Yeah, let's talk about that scene. Poor Kenny. Yeah. That's a
Kenny gets
scene they apparently
wasted.
wrecked. Yes. That's a scene apparently they cut down because it was way too bloody. And like that scene already in general is bloody. Oh, which reminds me, did you on streaming, was it the theatrical cut or the director's cut that you watched?
Theatrical.
Okay. So I watched the director's cut, which I've seen the theatrical cut a handful of times. The director's cut is they put all that blood back in. And like so yeah, so that scene is very bloody when he gets shot. I mean, they only cut like 2 seconds off of it, so like
Yeah.
But I love that where it's like, you have 2 seconds to comply and just unloads on him. And like and it's just like no one gives a shit that the guy just died. I feel like it's hilarious. Again, just kind of corporate greed. It's like, oh, he's just expendable. We'll get someone else,
Yeah, everyone just kind of like shuffles out of the meeting room. It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
I guess
and then
we're
like
done.
yeah, like I said, then Bob Morton's just like, oh, now's my time to shine.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I think he says something in the elevator when he's talking to the other guy. And he's just like, what? It's a shame about Kenny. He's just like, whatever. Who gives a shit?
He's like,
Like-
that's life in the big city.
Yeah.
Like, just
okay, yeah,
this
just
guy just
getting
got
murdered.
wasted by like a 10-foot tall robot. Like, that's the big city.
Yeah. Phil Tippett did the stop motion on Ed 209, and he's like really well known for doing stop motion. He did the stop motion for Star Wars, and did like all the AT-AT walkers in Empire.
Nice.
And Yeah, so
yeah, you can tell like there's a lot of I don't know what they used for it, but it's not like clay bullshit. Like there's
Yeah.
all kinds of like you can actually see like pistons moving and like things are like spinning
It's
on it
impressive.
and stuff. It's really really cool. Yeah.
it still holds up. I mean, obviously you can tell it's like not
Yeah, it's stop motion,
today's
obviously.
standard.
But
Yeah,
like,
you can tell.
I mean, it's not like it doesn't like it's not so jarring that it like pulls you out of the movie and you're like, oh, look at this, dumb claymation bullshit.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Like,
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't distract.
yeah.
So, and then let's go to another death scene. Let's talk about Murphy's death scene. Murphy's death scene. So in the director's cut, it's way more violent. Clarence takes a shotgun and blows his hand off, and it shows his hand like gone and like
I
just
saw
pouring
that.
blood. You saw that? Okay.
Yeah. His hand definitely exploded like on camera. In the,
I wonder
in
if
the
you did watch the
theatrical.
director's cut. Okay.
They don't linger on it, but you see it blow
okay.
up. Like
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and then they how many like they shoot him a lot with their shotguns.
Oh
like,
yeah.
like
Like
a lot.
each guy shoots at least like 4 or 5 times. Like
I don't
it's a
think you
lot.
see. Yeah, it's excessive. You don't see his arm blow off in the theatrical cut.
No.
Yeah, his arm blows off in the director's cut. And then Clarence finishes him off and shoots him in the head.
Yeah.
And like that is like more violent. And there's like a fake prosthetic dummy that they use, which is really cool. But his scene is like it's pretty crazy that they kill the main character like a half hour into the movie.
Yeah.
And apparently Paul Verhoeven wanted it to be edited where it was like at least 15 seconds of just black after he gets killed, like where it was like people would think it was the end of the movie, which they do about 10 seconds,
Yeah.
which is crazy. And apparently a bunch of people walked out on a test screening after he dies. So they basically edited it down again because of one, the rating, and two, just to make it not as brutal. Yeah, it's and then you get then RoboCop is born, which the one scene that kind of bothers me is like he's shot in the head. Is he's like still alive, and they're like the like doctors are trying to like resuscitate him, which is crazy. I don't know.
Yeah.
That always was interesting to me. And apparently those are real doctors, and they improvised. I put that in air quotes for people who are just listening, because they're real doctors. But they like improvised their way around that whole shoot. And Paul Verhoeven liked it so much. He's like, yeah, it's fucking awesome. Like it was better than they expected. For doctors being on camera on a movie set, like that's they'll look at the camera, and just stare at the camera. But I always find that scene interesting, how they try to like resuscitate him and save him when he's just already like wrecked.
Yeah. I was trying to remember like how badly he actually got shot, and like I think the director's cut probably makes it pretty clear that like he's toast.
Yeah.
Like the theatrical version, like he gets shot, but like he's wearing a bulletproof armor and
Yeah.
stuff, so like maybe it's believable that like they get there and like, oh, we might be able to save him, but like I mean he does get shot in the head point blank. So yeah, I mean it's kind of, I don't know. I feel like they needed a transition though from his death to his
To
like
RoboCop.
rebirth as RoboCop.
Yeah.
So like you need something. Yeah, I don't know. It is kind of now
It's
that you
interesting.
mention it,
It's always-
it is a little it's a little.
It's always been
interesting.
interesting to me. But yeah, like you said, they need a transition. But then you've got the transition of him going to RoboCop, which you don't really see the full image of him for a bit, which is really cool, and I love that they do that. They've got the POV, they've got him walking behind like frosted glass, they've got them where all the cops are going to like see what's happening and see RoboCop, and you just get glimpses of him. They also did that because it's like the suit was very problematic and very hard mobility wise for Peter Weller to move. And so they would shoot sometimes with him just having like the top portion of the suit on or like the bottom portion. And so it was just interesting. And I think it's kind of like one of those Jaws things where it's like, all right, well, the shark's going to malfunction, so let's just show less of it. Less is more, and that's exactly what they do in this scene. And it I feel like all the times people do that or filmmakers do that, it pays off.
Yeah. And like the way they intro everything is really cool with like the boot up sequences in like the corner and like the different like kind of like calibration things or whatever that are like going on is like really cool. I'm sure all of that was like mind blowing in 87, like super like crazy, like effects wise. But like, yeah, I thought it was really cool. It's a really, really interesting way to introduce or reintroduce the main character.
Oh yeah, the rebirth, like you said. Like I said, the suit was so problematic that it was so hot and heavy for Peter Weller that he would lose about 3 pounds a day from water loss. Eventually, an air conditioner was put inside the suit. And the first time they tried putting the suit on him, there's like different accounts of like, oh, it took 10 hours. Oh, it took 8 hours. Oh, it took 12 hours. Oh, it took 15 hours. Like either way, it took a long time for the first fitting to get him in the suit. He also, like, his stipulation of playing this role, he's like, I need to have this movement coordinator with me. And I'll have to look for his name. It's like some interesting name. It's a pretty cool name. I'll have to find it. But he hired this movement coordinator that was like a mime and would help him like figure out these robotic movements. And apparently Peter Weller was also kind of difficult to work with on the set, and would be in character as RoboCop, and only would like respond to people if they called him Robo or Murphy. It's like, come on, dude. Like, that's ridiculous.
So, of all the things to method act, a robot police officer is probably not high on that list.
Yeah, and a lot of the actors like ignored him. They're just like, okay, fuck off.
Yeah.
Like even Paul Verhoeven was like, you're being dumb. Stop.
That's like, I think one of the things that makes this movie cool is like it takes itself fairly seriously, but also like doesn't, because like
there's a lot of comedy in it.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of like that overacting kind of like going on too, where it's almost like a parody of like action movies in some ways. Like it helps you like I think like we said earlier, it's like strikes this really nice balance between all these different, hardcore like theme heavy kind of things than just like a nonsense popcorn movie, and like all those little elements just help like balance it between the two extremes, and like just make it like enjoyable to watch overall.
Yeah, it's you're spot on with that. Spot on. The soundtrack is probably like my favorite thing about the movie, honestly.
It's pretty good.
It's in my head after I watch it every time, and it's so damn good. I love it. It's like one of my favorite soundtracks. I don't know. It's just like sci-fi movies are my jam. That's my favorite genre because it can be anything it wants to be, and you can it can be realistic, but at the same time it's science fiction. It doesn't have to be realistic, and that's what I like about it.
A lot of creative leeway,
and that's what movies are, in my opinion. It's an escape from reality. it's fiction, and that's most movies, at least, and that's why I love sci-fi. It's my all-time favorite genre, and this movie is sci-fi action. It's just like it's up there with my top movies. It's so good. There's Verhoeven, like you said, with satire in this movie. He's known kind of for like his satirical themes in his movie. Like, have you ever seen Starship Troopers?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a very satirical, like, war alien invasion movie.
Yeah.
That's a great fun movie, and when we eventually get to the 90s, we'll 100% have to do that movie.
Yeah.
and Total Recall, because that came out
Total Recall
in 90. I love Paul Verhoeven. He's so good. But again, pain in the ass to work with. Apparently, him and Peter Weller had a tense relationship because Peter Weller kept complaining about the costume during the first few days of filming, and they also disagreed on how the screenplay should be interpreted and like how lines should be said. The studio intervened and fired Peter Weller. And the role was offered to Lance Henriksen, who we know from Terminator. He's one of the cops. We know him from Near Dark. He is Bishop in Aliens, and he had just played a robot in Aliens, so they're like, all right, he's perfect for the role. However, Henriksen turned down the role, and RoboCop was then played by the stunt coordinator for a little bit. They're just like basically like, all right, we just need to shoot this. There's no, don't speak, just do some lines, and it kind of somewhat resembled Peter Weller, the stunt coordinator. But then Peter Weller finally agreed to be more cooperative, so they buried the hatchet, and Verhoeven later took blame for the incident, saying, he was responsible for the delay in the costume design, and that didn't give Peter Weller enough time to, get his character down and practice and all that stuff. So, also they designed the suit specifically for Peter Weller because he was like 5'10" and pretty slim build. So it's like it would have been damn near impossible to find someone else to fit that. And so it's like they had no other choice to really hire him back. But pretty interesting that he was fired and came back.
Yeah, he's also an interesting choice to lead this movie. Maybe they picked him because he's like, skinny and pretty average height and build, I'd say. Because usually in a movie like this, you'd have a Schwarzenegger or Stallone or some like big ripped, kind of guy.
And they wanted Schwarzenegger. They wanted him for this role.
Yeah. I heard
he was
that.
too big. He was too big to fit the costume. So it's like, no, they're not going to design a costume around him. So pretty interesting.
Yeah,
especially like you said before this. I mean, this movie is produced by Orion Studios, and they did Terminator. We were watching the trailer before this, as we do all our before all our podcasts. We watch the original trailer and see what the audience would have seen had they seen the trailer for this movie in the 80s. And we noticed that the Terminator theme was playing during the trailer, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, whether that's intentional or just like the marketing department being super cheap and lazy.
Well,
we don't know, but
I mean, Terminator made them a lot of money.
Yeah.
Which they wanted to maybe capitalize, like, another robotic sci-fi movie, let's capitalize on that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some iconic scenes in this movie. I love where he first gets up and goes to fight crime and goes to the convenience store and, basically throws the guy into the, freezer door, fridge door. I love that. That scene's great. And, then you get the two guys harassing the one girl and, pulls out his gun and he's like, your move, creep. And then shoots the guy in the dick, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's right in the nuts.
Yeah, great scene. I love that, and you've got then you go to the gas station scene with Emil, who's played by Paul McCrane, and that scene's really cool. And you get RoboCop trying to stop him, and you get the line that Murphy said when he was trying to chase this gang down. He says, "Dead or alive, you're coming with me," and he says that line again. And it's like Emil recognizes him and is like, "We killed you." And it's just like that's such a cool scene. And then you get this crazy ass explosion, which Verhoeven apparently was like, "I need more. Make it bigger, make it crazier, make it more intense." Yeah. And like the pyrotechnics guys were like, "All right, Paul, we're going to show you." And they did such a massive explosion that like this. So this movie was filmed in Dallas, which is ironic because it takes place in Detroit. The city of Dallas was like, all right, we need to have like stipulations on how big you can make your pyrotechnics. That this movie caused them to rethink that and limit it because it like shattered windows for blocks apparently.
Yeah. Well, like what's wild about that gas station explosion is you can see the guy in the RoboCop suit walking and the flat fires blowing past him. Like
it's awesome.
Like,
that's an awesome
shit.
Shot. Yeah.
Yeah, like they were not messing around.
No. Yeah, that's I love all the lines. The lines are so classic, just like "Dead or alive, you're coming with me. Stop in the name of the law." Like all the shit he says is so good. Then I love the scene where Dick Jones sends Clarence, who's Red from that '70s show. I love that. I just love that he's the villain in this. Sends him to kill Bob Morton, and like Bob Morton's in his house, just like doing cocaine with prostitutes. Yeah, and like. Clarence says something about like "bye bye bitches" or something like that. Like "see you later bitches." It's just hilarious. And apparently Paul Verhoeven wanted to like. I read something. I'm sure I'm botching it, but basically like he was staying in character. Like he was making sure everyone stayed in character. So he also called the prostitute bitches. So everyone was like kind of cracking up on set. But he like. That scene with Bob where he gets shot in the legs is like so brutal. And like, like you feel so bad for Bob because they originally wrote Bob as like this scumbag corporate guy, but he is like the good corporate guy that you like because he creates RoboCop.
Yeah, he's slimy, but yeah, you're kind of like
he has redeeming qualities.
Well, and like the RoboCop project is supposed to be a good thing. Like it's not like this giant like the ED robot is like this like thoughtless killing machine basically, and like the what's his name Dick
Jones
says like, oh, it doesn't matter if it works. Like, we're going to sell the military spare parts for 25 years. It's like guaranteed profits, like all this shit. Yeah. And you're like, oh, okay. Like RoboCop's not that bad. And, Bob's really not that bad. But yeah, it's watching him get shot like 4 times in like the kneecaps and the legs is pretty rough.
Yeah. And then he pulls the pin of the grenade with his like teeth. And then blows them up, which is crazy.
With a digital timer on the grenade, which is a cool little like futuristic touch. Yeah,
I like that the villains are really really well done in this movie. Like Ronnie Cox, who plays Dick Jones, he always is so good as a bad guy. Like he's also in Total Recall, and he's great in that. And then Kurtwood Smith, who's Clarence, is awesome. I mean, it's just the villains are really well done in this, and they're, you want to hate them, and I like that.
Mm-hmm. And the one guy that like laughs all the time.
Yeah,
like, you can't wait for him to get killed. Like,
yeah, yep,
he's the absolute worst.
Yeah, and then you go into the next the next scene where they go into like that drug house is great, and RoboCop throws Clarence through like 3 glass plate windows.
Yeah.
While
he's reading
funny.
him his Miranda rights.
Yes.
Yeah.
And apparently, like, a lot of people thought, like, the studio and, like, the producers thought that the, like, police in real life were not going to like the movie because there's a lot of kind of, like, the police are going to strike and not really doing their job and robots are going to take over. But they, like, loved the movie, and they specifically loved that scene where he's reading the Miranda rights and throwing him through glass windows, all while doing that.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Like, this movie takes, again, a really, like, it rides the fence between glorifying and, like, making a, strong statement about police brutality. Like, the times where cops are, like, pretty violent, like, his partner, when she's first introduced, like, beats the shit out of somebody in the, like, in the middle of the, like, police station's, like, lobby.
And there's a funny reason for that,
like,
too.
And everyone's like, wow, what a badass. Like, it's like, I don't know if that's, like, a step too far, but, like, yeah, I mean, it walks that line pretty well. Without making it too, like, over the top and, like, preachy and, like, that kind of stuff, Yeah. You can kind of take it whichever way you feel like taking it, which, I think it's hard to do things like that, like, to kind of ride the fence in that sort of way, and not piss people off one way or the other.
Especially nowadays. Yeah. But they wanted, the producers and the writers wanted Lewis's character, played by Nancy Allen, Murphy's partner. They wanted her to be badass. That's why they have a short haircut on her. They didn't want her to be, like, sexualized in any way. They don't want her to be like Mrs. RoboCop at the end or anything like that. Like, they wanted her to be badass and stand on her own. And they do. Like, she's an awesome character. And, like, she fucking kicks ass. I know, like, like you said, she beats the shit out of that guy in the beginning. And apparently, to get in character, she Nancy Allen wore men's underwear, which is pretty funny. I like her character. I think she's awesome in it. Again, one of a movie with a well-written female character. It's, like, good. I like that.
Yeah.
It's, like, it's not preachy. It's good,
Right. And, like, she's a good addition to the movie where she brings some, like, empathy to the situation, which is good. Like, she's the one that's like, yo, Murphy, like, wake the fuck up. Like,
she brings out his humanity, which is awesome.
And, like, I can't stress this enough. This movie did not need a romantic angle.
No.
They didn't include it, and it's still good. More movies should do that. We don't need RoboCop having sex. Like, or whatever. Like, doesn't need it. Don't always need a romance in an action movie.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think she does an awesome job, and then when she's, like, helping him with his targeting system, it's cool. Like, she's just a good, well-written character, and she's strong and tough and badass, and I like that. Which I like that kind of factory, where, like, he gets shot in the beginning where Murphy dies, and then it comes back in the end. And it's like the final showdown. And I love how it's like, it's the bookends of the movie. It's like you get him dying here, but also redeeming himself here and redeeming his humanity in this like factory. And it's also like, it's very, it's like the decay. It's like an abandoned factory. It's like the decay of like American, and what am I trying to say here? Help me out, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if at this point in the 80s, if Detroit was already in its decline yet or not. It might have just started.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's
The decay of American industry. That's what it is.
Like, it's the first time in the movie where we get a setting like that. Is like all the other like major scenes are in like the glitzy office building of
Dick Jones.
Dick
OCP.
Jones and OCP and Secured, what is it, SecCon or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like we get to see the like shitty kind of like scummy part of the city that like he's supposed to be eradicating of crime so that they can build another glitzy skyscraper monolith development thing. So yeah, I mean, it's another cool kind of thematic message done really well.
Yeah. And then you get the climactic scene where he takes out Ed 209 with one of those like 50 caliber rifles, which is cool. And then he goes for goes to get Dick Jones, shows the recording, and then you wait till the main boss of OCP says you're fired. And he's like, thank you, and shoots him and blows him out the window, which is kind of goofy seeing him fly out the window because it's a puppet and his arms are like extremely long. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, great shooting, cop, or whatever. Like, you got a name? Murphy. And then it ends. And that's such an awesome fucking ending. Mm-hmm. And then you cues the soundtrack, and you got that badass soundtrack. It's such a great ending. And what's funny is, like, Paul Verhoeven, like, was, like, filmed additional scenes to be played at the end, and it was of Lewis's character in a hospital recovering to confirm that she was alive, and then assuring audiences that she also, again, like I said, wasn't going to be the bride of RoboCop, like that it was just a platonic relationship. But during a screening, the audience's reaction to Murphy saying the final line was so like strong that he's just like, all right, I'm ending it at that, which is awesome. Yeah. I love that.
Well, that's the final like capstone in his like recovery towards becoming human again, almost.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, perfect way to end.
Yeah, agreed. Now there's obviously fun dissection of American culture. Let's talk a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. The whole like sequence of that footage that these characters keep seeing on TV of I'd buy that for $1. Like that's hilarious.
And characters in the movie repeat the line.
Yeah.
Which kind of shows the like weird like brainwashing of like commercials and commercialism and stuff like that. Which it's such a dumb phrase too.
It's so dumb, like, and it's meant to be satirically dumb.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense, but people keep repeating it like it's this like genius thing. Yeah. It's pretty great.
Apparently that comes from a short story called The Marching Morons, which presents a cynical view of over-commercialized future that's desensitized to violence and war. It's like, and that's like really the epitome is like, you've got Emil, Paul McCrane's character, like sitting in his, like on his step van watching this, and you've got all this chaos going because like the cops are on strike. You've got all this chaos going on, like people are shooting, blowing things up, breaking, looting, and he's just watching that laughing. And it's just like, he's desensitized to it. And I think that's like a really good scene. Again, there's so much to dissect in this.
But another good example of that is when RoboCop is dreaming in the like police basement or whatever. And there's the two like lab coat guys like eating and like reading the newspaper and watching the news. And they're talking about how rebels in Mexico that are backed by the U.S. are like fighting with the like whatever Mexican like federal forces or something like that, and they're talking about how they just like bombed the shit out of Acapulco, and the lady in the lab coat's like, man, I was supposed to go there next week. And like that's like their reaction to this war that's like not too far from them. You know, it's like devastating Mexico. It's like, oh shit, I was gonna go on vacation there. You know, like, but it's a pretty good
satirical.
Yeah, and like throughout the entire movie there's these like news segments.
Yes. I want to talk about that.
That are talking about all these like what we would consider to be like crazy global conflict, like, and no one's fazed by them whatsoever.
Yeah, they're just saying it with a smile on their face.
Yeah, which is
and like,
nuts. Like,
yeah, and that's what I read too. Is like these, a lot of '80s movies start off with a crazy big action sequence, and this movie starts off with like satirical comedic news about the world events. Like that's how the movie starts off, and it's just like very interesting, and it really sets the tone of the movie. Yeah,
it has commercials about heart replacements with like futuristic like motorized hearts and stuff, and like they talk about how like it can be covered by your like health tax credit and like all these like different things. Like it's really cool. One, like we've been saying, satire, but also really cool world building, because it tells you like right away that like, oh, we're in the future, but it's not so distant that it's like unrecognizable, you know, and that they've got these kinds of technologies that are a little foreign to us, but understandable, and kind of sets the stage for RoboCop to be possible in like a really well packaged way.
It's a great thought. That's a great thought. And then you've got this corporate greed, OCP, just running the show. Like all these corporations and big companies. It's like it's getting even more relevant now with like all these monopoly companies and companies taking everything over. I mean, it's kind of similar to like, think about how we just had that CrowdStrike thing happen.
Yeah.
Where it's like this one company manages all these computers, and then you're fucked. And it's like the same. It's you know what I mean. Like it's kind of like I don't know. It's very relevant and very interesting, and how basically like this corporation owns the police. Like OCP like runs the police.
Yeah, because they're like. I think they say that like the police force was privatized to OCP. So like OCP basically runs them and owns them. But it part of the first pitch that Dick gives is he lists off or starts off his speech by saying like, we've been doing extremely well going into market segments that were previously looked at as unprofitable, like space travel and military and like all these different things, and like talks about how they've like turned them around for like record profits and stuff like that. And then you learn over time that like they're basically just scamming everybody into like these like insane kind of like like sell you shitty stuff, then they sell you parts to repair all the shitty stuff for 25 years or whatever, like, so it's just it's a really cool but subtle critique of the way that businesses can operate in this like corrupt and like shitty kind of monopolistic way, which like there's a lot of companies that kind of operate that way today.
Oh yeah,
it's like a prime business model to like make you buy replacement parts for things. So
upgrade to the next model every year. It's like it's very interesting. It's cool when like these 80s movies that are almost this one's almost 40 years old, that it's like still relevant. That's what I love. It's just like it's so cool, and again, that's why we do this, and that's why we talk about 80s movies, is because they're I don't know. I want to say underappreciated from our generation.
Yeah.
In my opinion, at least. I know people
Yeah.
appreciate these movies, but like, it's underappreciated in our generation.
Yeah, and like this is another example, I think, of another cult movie. Like, there's a diehard fan base for this movie, but it's not super widely appreciated, I think.
Yeah.
Would be the best way to describe it, and especially not really in our generation and younger. So yeah, I mean, I hope that we can spread this to some other people, because
That's the goal.
It is totally worth watching, and it's a blast, whether you care about all the other underlying stuff or not. Like, it's a great movie to watch. It's fun. So
Agreed. And I think that's a great note to kind of end on. What do we got next, Jake? What's next week?
you put me on the spot. I'm not ready.
I know, because I don't even know. Is it Back to the Future? Are we doing Back to the Future?
Yes, Back to the Future.
Okay, sweet. So yeah, we're going to be back with another blockbuster adventure, and it's Back to the Future. Everyone knows that movie. I'm excited to talk about it. I haven't watched it in a while.
I've been wanting to watch it for so
Me
long. Like, since we started
Me
the
too.
podcast, I've wanted to watch it again. I've been waiting until we could do it for real on the show.
I know, but I like doing the well-known ones here and there, and doing the under, because everyone knows Back to the Future. Most people know RoboCop, but like, so this it'll be a fun one. That's kind of what this month is. It's just like all the well-known ones, because it's blockbuster. Like, everyone knows these. So, we're looking forward to that, and we'll catch you next week.
Yep. See you.